Hello, everybody, and welcome to FFG Live. I am BK. Obviously, this is not our normal set. This is my home office. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. We have the coronavirus outbreak affecting a lot of people, but we want to still bring you some content. We had a panel that was originally planned to be given at Adepticon, and we're going to live stream it for you today. We're going to try it out. Like I said, I'm here in my home office. We've got Luke Eddy and Max Brook in the studio practicing safe social distancing over there in Roseville at the FFG studio, along with our live stream guy, Ryan Thompson. Thank you guys. I just want to say right off the bat for coming into the studio and doing that for us. So we're going to run through this presentation. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the cool transitions that I originally put in there. I apologize for that, but let's just jump right in here. I am going to toss things over to Luke here right away, and we're going to talk about some Star Wars Legion. What have you got for us, Luke?
Man, we have some great stuff. I'm glad that we are still going to get to give the fans what they want, so to speak, give them some cool new Legion product announcements. So to start with, obviously, it's a disappointment that we're not going to be at Adepticon. But in lieu of that, let's jump right into it. So to start with, I'm looking at the products that were announced so far for the new factions that are not quite out yet. We have, for the public, we have the ARC Troopers, and we have Padme as an operative. Very excited about those. Those are on their way soon.
Hold up, Luke.
Sure.
I'm trying to catch up.
Okay, we're getting the slides up for you. But those are for the Republic. Very excited for those. We're getting the first Special Forces for that faction, and also the first Operative, and a very interesting one at that. Padme will be pretty fun to play. I've played with her a bunch. And then,
Hold up, Luke.
well, okay, I'm still stalling. We're getting the slides ready.
We might have an audio issue.
Oh, sorry. Never mind. Audio issue. Should I keep talking?
Yeah, just banter a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm being told to banter a little bit while we resolve an audio issue.
Should I also be bantering, or should I?
Now you're fine.
Nah,
Okay.
I got it.
Luke's got the banter down.
Yeah, I got some. I can do the banter.
Just vamp.
Yeah, there you go.
Blah.
I mean, I might as well talk about the other Separatist ones too, because those have been announced. Obviously, we've got their first Special Forces in the form of the BX Commando droids, and then also Cad Bane,
Here.
their first operative.
Stop, man.
All right, we're going to solve this audio issue.
All right, go ahead and talk, Luke.
Okay. Anyways, we've got these new Special Forces, we've got these operatives, we're real excited about them. We're dipping into Clone Wars, the TV show, pretty heavily here. Obviously with the ARC Troopers, we've got Fives and Echo in there as characters, as unit upgrades, and then with the Commando droids, and Cad Bane, and Padme too. A lot of what the inspiration we've drawn on for making that character for Legion came from the Clone Wars TV series. So that is some of the things we have already announced that we're really looking forward to. But now, if we're ready, we're going to get into the new stuff. So first up, we're going to go into a new Special Forces unit for the Rebel faction. And that is going to be Clan Wren Mandalorians. So again, this is Special Forces for them. This is the first Special Forces they're getting since the Rogue or One Wave. Yep, so Pathfinder. So it's been a little while. These ones obviously are super cool, mostly because they're Mandalorians, and Mandalorians are awesome. These are obviously, we're drawing heavily on the Rebels TV show here with these guys. These are the Clan Wren Mandalorians. So this is Mandalorians before the Purge. They're still sort of struggling against the Imperial occupation, and even though they're kind of on their own, their goals still very much align with the Rebellion. And as we see in Rebels, with the help of Sabine Wren, they actually join the Rebellion for a moment and help fight alongside them. So they're going to be a Rebel faction Mandalorian unit, which we're super excited about. Now, for the other original trilogy faction, we are getting Inferno Squad. another sort of non-film unit. These come from the Battlefront 2 video game. Obviously, Iden is coming out soon, and these are the special forces that she is the commander of. So we're going to be getting some sweet characters in this as well, in the form of Gideon Hask and Del Meeko, along with some other cool sort of special forces characters. Now, this is not it though for the Clone Wars factions, because we also have for them new support units in the form of an ATRT for the Republic, and for the Separatists, we have the Stapp Riders. So these are not like crazy out of the blue, no one could have guessed this options. These are just like solid fan favorite additions to the faction. Both of them sort of are different than the support units that the faction already has, but both of them are also in many ways very similar to existing support units. Obviously, we have the Rebel ATRT already. The Republic one, some slight variations on it, which we'll get into. And then the Stapps are very much like the Imperial speeder bikes, but again, because of the fact that they're piloted by droids and even more expendable, they also have some differences in them that make them unique and interesting. So those are the 4 products that we're announcing. Really excited about them, and we're going to get into some more details about those now. So first up, we'll talk some more about Clan Wren. So we should have the slide up with some of the up-close shot of the minis, and they are super cool. So as you can see, we've got flight stands for these guys. These are the same flight stands that we talked about with the ARC Troopers. So you get 2 different varying sizes, and you can switch between, or while you're building your model, you can choose what size you want for them. There's going to be 7 miniatures in the product, and many of these have customization options that allow you to, say, change up one of the special or the heavy weapons minis into a normal guy, and so there's a lot of value in getting multiples of this product as well. You can make 2 units that look very different on the tabletop, so that's pretty sweet. And if you look closely, you can notice that some of these minis have some unique details. For example, on the right, you can see that is Ursa Wren. She's got her cool, unique armor with some extra sort of parts to it, and her helmet that has sort of the little owl fins on the top. We're going to focus in on one of these miniatures, though, that is probably my favorite in the pack, and that is one of the heavy weapon miniatures. That is the Besked Duelist mini. She's super cool looking. The miniature itself obviously is gorgeous. She's got that Besked sword. And she's a heavy weapon miniature, so there's an upgrade card with her that you can see. And it's interesting because one of the things we're doing, you saw this with like the some of the upgrades for the commando droids that gave that melee option. There's upgrades that sort of can pivot a unit into filling a role they maybe wouldn't normally do otherwise. The Mandalorians are a pretty close range unit. They have pistols, and they also move fast because of their jetpacks. But by taking this upgrade, you can sort of pivot them into a stand-in melee unit as well, adding 2 red dice, and then the new keyword Duelist, which is interesting because it sort of lets you play with tokens differently depending on whether you're going offensively or defensively. You can spend a aim token in melee to gain pierce, or you can spend a dodge token in while you're defending against a melee attack to gain immune pierce. So in the right circumstance, they can actually go toe-to-toe with Jedi, or they can get that pierce and really try and hammer a unit that's not prepared for melee combat. So that's a miniature I'm super excited about. Moving on to the customization options here. We'll talk a bit more about this. As you can see, here's a parts diagram. The miniatures are going to be relatively easy to assemble, but include a lot of interesting customization options. The one you're looking at right here is Tristan. On the top there, he's got his rifle. While a part of Death Watch, he uses a rifle, so he keeps that while fighting with his clan. But then on the bottom there, if you want to, instead, say you've bought a second pack of this product, and you're like, well, I don't need a second Tristan, but I'd like one of my other Mandalorians to look different. We've included options to switch him up and give him those dual pistols instead of the rifle. So that's super cool. So you're going to get a lot of mileage out of getting multiple sets with this, a lot of options for customization and sort of making this your own and making multiple units look differently. And I think, yep, so there's the whole product for you. Real excited about that one. And we're going to now transition into the other original trilogy faction Special Forces unit, the Inferno Squad. As you can see, there are also 7 miniatures in this product. And you're going to be able to run this, and this is going to be true of the Clan Wren one as well, as a unique unit of Clan Wren, or in this case, Inferno Squad specifically, or you can run this sort of as a TIE Special Forces unit that is generic, and you can field multiple of them. The Clan Wren unique unit will have synergies with Sabine. Similarly, the unique Inferno Squad Special Forces unit is going to have synergies with Iden Versio. You can see the minis here, besides being awesome, include Gideon Hask and Del Mico. You've got a cool T-21 Heavy in the background there. And then in the middle there, you have another character with the Inferno Squad colors on them. And that, of course, is Saint Marana from the novelization. So you get your 4th Inferno Squad member there. We're going to zoom in on Del Mico here now and talk about him. First of all, again, super cool mini. He's got that sweet sniper rifle. If you look at his card, he's got a lot of really interesting things going on. So first off, you can see he has range 1 to 5. So this is the new range band. So he's a range 1 to 5 sniper. He has 2 health. That's what that means. That's an interesting new feature. Characters like this that are important, that don't quite rise to the level of being an operative or a commander, still, feel like on the battlefield, like they're tougher than a normal person, and they're going to last longer and take some more hits. So a miniature like Del Mico has 2 health, and that means that just that miniature has 2 health, regardless of the standard health stat on the unit that he's being added to. And that's important because if you look carefully, you can see that he can be added to the Imperial Special Forces, that is the name of the sort of generic Inferno Squad or non-Inferno Squad unit, or added to a Imperial Core Trooper. So your Stormtrooper units, he can jump in and sort of take charge of that unit of Stormtroopers, as we see Inferno Squad doing in the video game, and lend them some important, some pretty powerful fire support in the form of having high velocity, lethal 1, that's that new keyword you can spend an aim token to get Pierce 1. In addition, if you've played the single-player campaign of Battlefront, you'll know that he is also a pretty skilled technician. He fixes Dio the robot. So in addition to being a sniper, he can also one time repair 2 wounds off of a vehicle or a droid for you. So that's pretty cool. So now we're going to go to the customization options for that. Here we've got that T-21 heavy weapons miniature up on the screen. And again, you can see that you can assemble it as the T-21 miniature, or you can assemble it with an E11 and have it stand in as a normal, just Special Forces, TIE Special Forces miniature. So, once you've gotten multiple of these, you have options and ways to sort of, make those generic minis in the squad different from unit to unit. So this is true of Del Mico and Gideon Hask as well. They can also be assembled with and without their helmets. And then they can also, similar to how Tristan was, you could assemble him with just the those guys with just the E11s as well. Cool. So yeah, that is the Inferno Squad unit. Real excited about Inferno Squad. They're going to add some cool options to what the Imperials can do, and as you learn more about them, you'll see some cool synergies with Iden as well. So that is it for the new units for our Rebel and Imperial factions. We're going to go back to the Clone Wars and talk about some new Clone Wars support units. So first up for the Republic, we have the ATRT. Now, obviously, we have ATRTs in the game already, and these are the Rebel salvaged ATRTs. So how is this one different? Well, if you look closely, you can see that, now first of all, that had a bit of a nerf, if you will. It doesn't surge to crits on offense. Now, thematically, if you want to justify that, maybe the rebels have juiced it up with some more firepower. They tend to do that. They did that with the land speeder, obviously, that you see. Strap some guns to it. However, this was also important for balance reasons because the ATRT is a great fire support platform for your regular clone core trooper units. And just surging to hit is already great because they don't normally. So when you use that fire support unit on your keywords and they add their attack to an ATRT attack, they're getting that surge to hit. That is already really good. Didn't need to also be surged to crit. So it lost that. However, it gained some advantages in different ways. First of all, on that surge chart, you can see they now surge to block on defense. So the clone ATRTs, a little more armored. The rider itself is more armored. That's part of it. So they can take a beating a little bit better. They're not salvaged. These are ones hot off the assembly line. Additionally, under their keywords, you can see they have Scout 1 now, so they get to move up ahead a little bit. This opens up, sort of maybe using that flamethrower weapon a little more effectively. And then the other difference is that the rider itself has a different weapon. So the clone ATRT rider is more heavily armed. They have a little mini rocket launcher, range 1 to 3, decent number of dice, critical 1, impact 1. So one strategy may be to run these without any extra weapons on it and use these primarily as a fire support platform for your Republic armies, which is great because they're nice and cheap, cheap units is something that the Republic needs. This will have the exact same weapons as the Rebel ATRT, so nothing new there as a surprise. It's those same weapons you know and love. And obviously, if you're playing competitively or pay attention to the competitive scene of Legion, you'll know that there are points changes for a lot of those weapons. So some of them are much cheaper, much more viable, so take that into account. That is the unit card for the ATRT. We're going to move on to some of the diagrams of its parts. You can see here, we got two different pilots for you. So they're both ARF troopers, which is traditionally what rides or pilots the ATRTs. One is the ARF trooper that we see in the Clone Wars cartoon, and then the other on the bottom is the ARF trooper that we see later on in the Clone Wars, specifically during the Battle of Kashyyyk. So we've got two different options there for you. Here is a diagram of some of the actual assembled ATRTs. In addition to the different pilots, these are going to be much more posable. Legs can be set in different configurations, unlike the original Rebel ATRT. So again, with like a lot of these kits, what I keep saying is you're going to be able to really sort of like customize this, make this your own. If you have multiples, one can look different from the other one. That's the ATRT for you. There's the box. And then now we're going to move on to the other support unit for the other Clone Wars faction, the Separatist Stap Riders. This is a pretty fun one. We've got the unit card up there for you. As you can see, some similarities with, say, speeder bikes. You got your Speeder 1, you got your cover. However, you've got some other interesting things going on. The Stap Riders don't have their own gun to shoot, so you're just relying on the blasters attached to the ATR or the Stap itself. A little less powerful than a speeder bike. Also, if you look on their surges, they don't surge to block, even with a white die. So they still have that same battle droid save. However, as long as they keep moving, they're going to stay relatively safe because of Agile 1. So even more speedy and maneuverable than speeder bikes. They can't take a lot of hits, but as long as you keep them moving, on the battlefield, they'll get the at least one dodge token with their compulsory move due to speeder. And then they may get another one too if they don't have an order because they have AI move. As far as they know, they're just supposed to be flying around. So if you don't tell them what to do, they're just going to keep mostly fly around. But at least it'll kind of keep them safe because of that Agile 1. And then lastly, they have Coordinate, Droid Trooper, and Vehicle, which is interesting. These are recon vehicles. They're not really heavy hitters. So one of the interesting things they're going to do for you is help you coordinate your whole army, and not just your droids, but also your vehicles that you have on your army. So issuing an order to one of these could chain that order to, say, your tank, or to your droidicas, for example. So these will play well with other vehicles, as well as slot in nicely to a otherwise all infantry army. So I'm excited about those guys. Snaps in general too are pretty sweet. I'm a big fan of that design. Yeah, we can look at some assembly here. These also have those flight stands, 2 different variable sizes, so you can adjust them a little bit. Flying low or flying high. And yeah, so that's Staff Riders for you. Very excited about those. And that is going to be it for our Legion announcements. All stuff we're very excited about. Looking forward to some important ranks being added to certain factions, as well as coming back around to, like with Rebels and Imperials, it's been a while since they've had their another Special Forces unit, so some more for them with some interesting options that affect other units as well.
I've been trying to compile a couple questions from the chat for you, if you don't mind, before we move into the X-Wing here. All right, so going back to both Clan Wren and Inferno Squadron really quickly, you briefly touched on how both of those units, you can deploy them in 2 distinct units, similar to previous Special Forces units like the Rebel Commandos and things like that, but they're slightly different in how you can do that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the 2 different unit options for both of those expansions?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to, Brian. You are correct. It is similar to previous Special Forces units, like the strike teams, for example. In this case, though, what I alluded to is that the second card, if you will, the second unit card, represents a unique unit. So there will be a generic, no little unique dot, unit of Mandalorian resistance, and you can field as many of those as you can fit in your army, 3, since they're Special Forces. But then there's also a card for specifically Clan Wren, and that is, it will be the same unit, so I'll say Mandalorian Resistance, but it'll have the Clan Wren subtitle. And that will, in this case, you specifically will have Ursa and Tristan Wren as a part of that unit. Similarly, for Inferno Squad, you'll have a unique card for Inferno Squad, and that will be made up of Gideon Hask and Del Mico and Saint Marana. Like I said, each of the unique ones is going to have a special synergy with their respective characters that are already in the game, Sabine and Iden, which will be cool. But both of them also have that generic option, so you're more than welcome to field 3 of the generic unit, the generic TIE Special Forces or the generic Mandalorian Resistance units in your army.
Sure. And to kind of specifically focus on Inferno Squad just for a moment, with the Del Mico upgrade card, and this is also the same for Gideon Hask, I believe. Those can be added to core units, so they can be added to stormtroopers, they can be added to snow troopers, they can be added to shore troopers. It does say Imperial Special Forces, but that refers to the actual Inferno Squad generic Special Forces, not like other Imperial Special Forces units that, like Death Troopers, right?
Correct. So if it were any Special Forces unit, you would see that rank icon. Imperial Special Forces is the technical name of Inferno Squad's type of unit in Star Wars. I know it's a little confusing, but that is what they are technically called. So yes, they are the Imperial Special Forces, but that is what that refers to.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. The last question I believe I have is, we revealed the Stapp Riders today, which is the second support unit for the Separatists. What do the Stapp Riders bring to the Separatists that Droidicas don't?
Speed. on demand, I would say. Well, and also, droidicas are a little expensive, and they're heavy hitters. They have that shield. They're durable. They can have speed if they switch into wheel mode, but obviously doing that means that they won't be able to shoot that round. Whereas the Staps, they're going to fly around constantly. They're not heavy hitters. They're a little fragile. One of the biggest things you're getting out of them, though, is that coordinatability. So unlike droidicas, which you're not going to be able to chain an order to, they're sort of a in your when you're putting out orders, they can sort of be a dead end a little bit, so to speak, in issuing orders to your army. However, with the Staps, you issue an order to the Stap, and then the Stap starts that chain because they have coordinate droid trooper. Or you issue order to if you have multiple Staps, one Stap will give it to another Stap, that Stap will give it to a third Stap, then that Stap can give it to a droid unit, and then that chain continues. So they don't break up that sort of order chain like how a droidica would.
Yeah. And these guys actually, I've seen some questions in the chat about articles. We are going to have official announcement articles directly after this stream. I will put those up. And those are actually going to include a really cool upgrade card. So a lot of people notice that the Stap Riders have the comms upgrade, and they actually come with a new upgrade that is going to help them chain these orders, correct?
Correct. And Brian has a good point. Brian, you saved some nice little nuggets for the articles. We are not spoiling everything in these, obviously. You are going to have to wait to see the unit cards for Clan Wren and Inferno Squad. We're sorry, but we think you can manage. We really wanted to show off the miniatures, focus on that. And actually, I do want to return to one slide if we could return to the assembly guide for the Staps. Max pointed out something I appreciated when we were looking at these earlier. Max, what is it you like about this particular droid here that's flying?
Well, I couldn't help but notice and really appreciate that there is a droid flying around, waving its arm at those clones or what have you.
Shaking that fist in the air.
Yes. So it seems to be a nice bit of personality with those B1s, which is kind of the best part of them, because certainly it's not their combat performance.
No, absolutely not. No, comedic value? Yeah, we interjected some comedic value in there. Cool. Brian, any other questions we have on Legion? Any questions you have?
I guess we have one last question also regarding the Staps. Just for clarification, there are 2 Staps in every expansion, correct?
Yes, 2 Staps. Just like speeder bikes, they're on a 50 millimeter base. One ATRT.
Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Everybody in the chat, look out for announcement articles for these things immediately after the stream that will be going live. Thank you, Luke, for coming in and sharing us all this exciting Legion content with us. I really appreciate you being willing to do that. Let's move on to X-Wing.
Yeah, so let's talk about X-Wing.
And actually, sorry, Max, before I throw it over to you, I apologize.
Oh, yes.
Just one thing that I want to talk about. So a lot of people who were going to Adepticon probably remember this. We had the limited edition Royal Naboo N1 Starfighter expansion in the beautiful chrome paint job that we're going to have both available at Adepticon and through our website. Obviously, Adepticon is no longer taking place, so that expansion is going to be available through our web store tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Central Time. There will be a limit of 2 of those per order. You can place your orders, like I said, tomorrow 11 a.m. Central Time. We do ask you to bear with us given the circumstances going on in the world right now. If you guys don't know, Minnesota is being ordered to stay at home beginning tomorrow. So you can order it tomorrow, but we are not exactly sure when those will ship out. So please, given the circumstances, be patient with us there. They will come out to you when you order one. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you, Max. And yeah, now I'm just going to turn it over to Max, and he'll give you some nice X-wing updates.
Well, I think you gave the X-wing update that people were probably most anxious to hear. So that's good. But let's talk about some other exciting stuff. So what have we got coming up for X-wing? Well, we've got Wave 7, which is 3 new ships. And there's some interesting stuff in Wave 7. So we've got, for starters, the Z-Class shuttle. So the Z-Class shuttle is a pretty new thing for the faction it's going into. You may remember this from The Last Jedi. This is the shuttle that Finn and Rose use in their escape to return to the base, or to reach the base on Crate. What is it? Well, it's a light shuttle for the First Order, and that's actually a pretty big game changer for them on the table. If you've played First Order, you sort of know it's like, all right, my one support option is this mammoth of a ship, the Upsilon class shuttle, which is terrifying, but it's not exactly an economy option. So the Z-Class shuttle gives you a light support craft that can really perform. It's about as tough as an X-Wing. It has an okay dial. It doesn't fly great, but it's more maneuverable than an Upsilon. And it brings a relatively low-cost coordinate to the table, which, given that the First Order has so many potent aces and interesting builds around that, we think people are going to get a lot out of. And who are the characters we have for this? Well, one of the first ones we have is Gideon Hask. Hey, look who's back.
We're announcing 2 Hasks today.
Everybody gets a Hask if they are the Empire or the First Order.
Ooh, true.
So what does Gideon Hask do? Well, Gideon Hask is a lifelong diehard of the Empire. He really believes, and so he ends up as a member of the First Order who trains new cadets. He's a harsh Hask master. You can see that in his ability, where he gives a bonus to generally any sort of lower firepower ship, those TIEs that are flying alongside him, and he gets those cadets to really work, but they put themselves in danger with a strain token. But there's other types of First Order characters too. So in addition to our characters in Battlefront, we've also got Agent Terex. Agent Terex appears in the Poe Dameron comics. And he's not so loyal as Hask. Terex is more of a trickster. He's a mercenary. The pilot version of him has some cool stuff you'll get to see later. But the crew version of him reflects sort of his nature as a schemer. And he actually has, because he's two-faced, he has sort of 2 sides to him. He has this version as a schemer who generates some calculate tokens, which sort of foreshadows what can happen to him over the course of the game when he turns into a cyborg, because eventually Commander Malorus gets tired of his betrayals and has him turned into a cyborg. But even then, he's not totally loyal. And you can see with his ability that, he kind of does what he wants, and you sort of have to make the best of it. So he's this really interesting thing from a mechanical standpoint, because of course having these calculate tokens on demand for a while is great. But then he flips into this other side that's different and sometimes useful, but sometimes dangerous. But that's not the only exciting medium ship we have even. We've also got the Lat-I, the Lat infantry carrier version. And so this, obviously, from Attack of the Clones, it from Clone Wars, where we actually see it fighting in space occasionally. And this is a really interesting new option for the Republic, because they haven't had the sort of mid-weight support ship. They've got the ARC 170, which can sort of pull that role in a pinch, but it's a little different. This is really a fire support gunship, and that's reflected in its ship ability, fire support. So fire support lets you improve somebody else's shot, or your own shot if you're firing one of the missiles you've got equipped, and you've got your turret in the right arc. So this ship is really meant to give the Republic a backbone ship that you can put into a force of V-19 Torrents to buff their shots, or put in with some Jedi to really soup up their firepower. Or you could even run a couple of them together and have just a scary amount of fire coverage with the ability to make some of those shots really count. Because it's a transport, it also carries a lot of crew. and gunners and such. And so here we have Ghost Company, which is only one example of the exciting familiar faces you'll see in here. You might recognize Ghost Company from the Clone Wars. And obviously they've got an ability that's pretty good on this. It's also pretty good for epic play if you're using the CR90 that the Republic has available. And Ghost Company obviously gets you that nice extra linked action. It also gets you a strong gunner ability, but it's taking up 2 of your slots. And there are going to be a lot of people you want in those slots. There are a number of familiar Jedi and clone faces. I mean, the clone faces are very familiar, but a lot of familiar clone and Jedi faces that you're going to be excited to have in here. And finally, we have the HMP gunship. And this is the oddball of the wave. It's not medium. It's small. It is a big small ship, but it is definitely small. We had to actually print out the 3D print and put it on the base to decide whether it was a small or medium, but it's definitely a small. And it also it has a couple of weird features. It moves in a very unusual way, but you're going to have to wait a little while to find out more about that. It's also got this full front firing arc. And it's got, as with many Separatist ships, a couple of different slot outlays depending on which version you're using. It also has a pretty interesting ship ability. So unlike a lot of Separatist ships you've seen, it doesn't have networked calculations. This is a droid ship with a slightly different function. It's a hunter, so we gave it networked aim. Networked aim kind of turns its target locks into fire control systems, but it gets better the more locks you have. And they don't have to be locks from other HMP gunships either. It isn't limited to things with networked aim. So if you want to have some cheap vultures, throw some locks down, and then take that really high quality missile shot with the HMP, you've got the chance to do that. So there are just a lot of interesting builds this opens up for the faction. It also has the ability to carry a tactical relay. And it has Kalani. Kalani is a character who you'll see in the Clone Wars and in Rebels. He shows up as this sort of cunning antagonist in the Clone Wars, and then in Rebels, the Rebels sort of have to, make peace with him and figure out how to work with him and put aside the old grudges. But he's always presented as this tactical mastermind who can outthink his opponent. And so we really wanted to encourage you to try to be that tactical mastermind with his ability and guess exactly where your opponent's going to be. And if you do guess that correctly, you'll be rewarded for it. So he's got a nice, strong ability. It's also pretty good with low initiative ordnance, helping them pick up those locks, which is pretty nice with the HMP gunship. So we've covered a couple of factions here, but there's a big thing we haven't talked about, which is what's coming in the future for X-Wing, what's coming for especially the Rebels and the Empire, who haven't had any new stuff for a while. Well, to look to the future, we're going to look to the past a little bit. So a lot of you probably remember Aces packs from First Edition. In fact, I know that these are a favorite of Luke's.
This is true. I'm a big fan of these Aces packs. First of all, paint jobs. That's one of the coolest things about these. Like that blue X-Wing and the red TIE Defender. So are these new Aces packs also going to have new paint jobs?
Thank you for asking that question. They certainly are. So these Aces packs are they're going to be familiar ships with new paint jobs. They're going to have a bunch of new pilots and a whole bunch of new upgrade cards. They'll be hitting a bunch of different factions. So it's not limited to the Rebels and the Empire. But the Rebels and the Empire are definitely getting some of the exciting ones soon. They're also, unlike the First Edition Aces packs, they're a little more thematically oriented. They're focused around a particular, say, a rebel cell at a time, perhaps, or a particular Imperial battle group, or a certain, First Order organization, or what have you. That's the sort of thing that they'd be focused around. And so the pilots are going to thematically link together to a particular time period and a particular, event or series of events or piece of media. And on top of that, you're going to get a whole bunch of upgrades These are pretty hefty on upgrades because one of the functions we wanted these to serve that the Aces packs really did in first edition and that we want to make available to people is that these can make a really nice, way to either start collecting a new faction or start, help a friend get into the game or get into the game yourself if you've been on the fence. Thanks to the fact that you can buy the movement tools, you can buy the dice, you can buy the damage decks. You don't even need a core set, and this gives you a nice set of ships to play the game with, a wide variety of pilots, and just a big old handful of upgrade cards to get you started. A fair chunk of which are also new, so it's not only for that, it's also for players. And a lot of those upgrades also tie in thematically with the time period. So you'll see things that are relevant to the pilots who are appearing. Maybe there'll be little tricks that you saw them do in the TV show or in the movie or other things like that. And so this just gives us a chance to go back. Oh, the other exciting thing, I can't believe I almost forgot to mention, is that we're going to be revisiting some iconic pilots again at different stages of their life. We've done this before in a couple cases. We have a few Sabines, we have a couple of Anakin Skywalkers, but we're going to be doing this with other pilots too. So they'll have a new subtitle, a new ability, potentially a new initiative if it's a significantly different stage of their life, as we see with Anakin. Young Anakin from The Phantom Menace has a lower initiative than fully trained Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, and really he's never Jedi Master, I guess. Jedi Knight, not technically Jedi Master, Anakin. And so this will be a similar thing. You'll get to see people at different stages of their life, different training, and it's just a fun opportunity to do that because we know there are a lot of iconic characters people love, and we want to give you more options for those characters.
Hey Max, what might be one such character that we would see? Oh, the slide is missing.
Yeah. We'll let that float. We'll let that float. But I think you're going to find some exciting stuff here. Yeah.
Brian?
All right. So, Max, we have a bunch of questions. I'll try and ask a few of them. Sorry, they were scrolling really fast. So one of the first questions, everyone was very excited about Kalani there and the HMP gunship. That wasn't a typo with 3 recurring charges on him, correct?
It's not a typo. That is correct. He's got 3 recurring charges. Why 3 recurring charges? It seems like you should just have an infinite number. It turns out that when there are like 7 vulture droids on the board, that difference does actually matter. We tested him, working every time, and we found that it could just be really oppressive to play against sometimes. So yes, it's a lot of recurring charges. We probably wouldn't ever do more than 3 recurring charges, but it does mean that he can't trigger more than 3 times around. And sometimes we want that.
Nice, yeah. And tell us a little bit more. I mean, everybody obviously very excited about these new Aces packs, new paint schemes on a lot of different ships, and new pilots and new versions of some iconic pilots. How are these going to be similar and different to the Servants of Strife and Guardians of the Republic squadron packs that we saw for Separatists and the Republic when they first entered X-Wing?
They're going to be similar to those products in a number of ways. I think that's a decent comparison point. They have they are slightly different in their general function because those were also the first appearance of those ships, and then on top of that, those were sort of this introductory point to those factions entirely. So these will be a little different. They'll serve in they'll be a similar thing where they can be an introductory point to the faction, but they don't have to get the faction quite as up to speed as long as they provide a sort of a solid, playable base in and of itself. In Servants of Strife and Guardians of the Republic, we really made sure, let's make sure we get you just about every upgrade card you're going to need if you've never played X-Wing before, and you're getting into this faction, and what slots can you use, this is what you need. These won't be focused in quite the same way. They won't have as much proportional reprint content. They will have some of that, to be sure, but the focus won't be quite as much on that, and it'll be a little bit more on, how do I get this thematic squad on the table in a fun way? They do have a ton of upgrades in them, like those. They do have fair number of ships and pilots and all that. So I would say they're similar. They're not exactly the same.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm very excited about it. I don't know the best way to phrase this question, but you hinted at a few different factions that might be getting these different Aces packs. What can you tell us about what factions are going to see these, perhaps?
As long as you're fine with me answering that, do we want to just go ahead and spoil the first one?
I would love to spoil the first one, yeah.
All right, let's just go ahead and spoil the first one. I didn't see the slide there, so I wasn't sure if we should, but let's do it. The first one's going to be for the Resistance. And that might seem like an interesting choice, but there was just a really big movie featuring the Resistance with a bunch of new pilots, some iconic pilots returning with new abilities to reflect their character growth and change over the course of the trilogy. So yeah, we're excited to give them sort of a shot in the arm of really relevant content.
Well, Max, and as well, there was a bright orange X-Wing.
Yes, there was also a bright orange X-Wing, and that's going to be in there.
Yeah, we may have seen some different paint jobs for some X-Wings in that movie. So in addition to new pilots, yeah, you're going to see these. Yeah, different paint schemes, correct?
Yes.
All right. Awesome. I'm trying to see here real quick if we have any other questions. I'm not seeing anything that we haven't answered, so let's move on. Let's talk about Star Wars Armada for a minute here. Why don't we?
Would you like me to talk about Armada, Brian?
Yeah, go ahead, Max. Yep.
Unfortunately, Michael Gurnis isn't here with us today. We wanted to keep the group as small as possible in the office, but Michael is out there, and I did ask him beforehand what I should pass along. So our news about Armada is that we will have more news soon, but we do have some cool art to show off about that further news soon, featuring some spoilers for commanders we think people are going to be really excited for upgrades, and for a general sense of the sorts of things we're going to have. So I know you were really excited about those droid racks, Luke, and what they do with the...
I was excited about the fact that through talking with Michael that these factions are going to play very differently. They have a lot of upgrades and things that change how the sort of normal rules of Armada function to give them each sort of a unique flavor. So there's going to be some really interesting and unique upgrades. And I think you touched on it too. The center image there, of course, is, we're going to have some cool characters too, leading these Armada fleets.
Yeah, and as we see with the droid racks and with the clone at the gun station there, we've got some upgrades that really hit the themes of the period, really make those ships feel different, and feel like they're really crewed by loyal clone troopers or droids, mostly useful for their comedy value.
Right. But it's an announcement of an announcement. We'll have an announcement later.
Yes, but
in the meantime, Armada's still alive and kicking, and we got cool stuff coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot to show you guys today, unfortunately, but there was some stuff going around from Gamma, some images, so we wanted to just give you a little bit more art, try and tease a few more things that are coming in Armada for the Clone Wars, and we will have more updates later this year. Please hold tight on those. That is pretty much all I have. Do you guys have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think we're good.
Stay safe out there, everybody.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm really excited about this X-Wing stuff. I think it's super cool that we're dipping into all of this. So I don't work on X-Wing, so I see what the other people are working on, and I get excited about it sort of as a player would. And I'm excited about, just how much content we're dipping into, from games and more obscure characters in the films and revisiting characters at different points in the films, or when they appear in TV shows, for example, or comic books too. One of the crew cards that we showed off today was from the Poe Dameron comic book, so like that's something that's very exciting to me. And I think you expressed a similar thought too when looking at the Legion stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, and we're also just getting to, I think the best example of something fairly obscure, but I'm so glad we're getting in the game, is the Beskad Duelist. And that is such a cool thing to have, and, it's really neat because that's a relatively, deep cut.
Deep cut?
Hey.
That's a relatively deep cut for our fans there, but we know that fans of Mandalorians are nothing if not dedicated, and
this is true.
It's a good time to be a fan of Mandalorians. So.
Yeah. Well, and anyone who's sort of paid attention to some of what we've talked about at Gamma, some of that has gotten out. That these are not going to be the last Mandalorian units for Legion. There will certainly be more in the future. In the far future, so don't hold your breath. But we got stuff cooking. We got a stew going.
We have stuff. There are plans. Yes. All right. Well, I forgot to address an earlier question about X-Wing, about preview articles. We are, as most everybody out there knows, we are currently working from home. So I am working on the X-Wing preview articles for the Z-Class shuttle, the LAT, and the HMP. So you can look for those, hopefully late April and early May, I would say, for those preview articles. Keep your eye out for those. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you for bearing with us under these extraordinary circumstances. Thank you, Luke and Max and Ryan in the studio, for coming in and being willing to do this. I really appreciate you guys pulling this off. We wanted to bring everybody at home some content, and thank you guys for stepping up and doing this presentation. So I don't have my little prompts in front of me anymore, but thanks everybody at home for joining us. Please subscribe to our channel. We have the links below to do that. We didn't really show off our nice game table as much as we normally do, but thanks to Carolina Game Tables for that. If you are going to be watching this on YouTube VOD later on, all of the links and everything to subscribe are at the bottom of the video. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you joining us today for our impromptu Adepticon Star Wars miniature game panel. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time. I'm still here. I can hear you, yeah. Yeah, that was real good. I think that went well. Oh, hey, everybody at home can still hear me. Hey, everybody. Hot mic.